All right. So, have you ever been told that you have a diagnosis of diabetes, so you should stop eating fruit? Well, if that sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. And today we're going to clear that up because that is like one of my biggest pet peeves when I hear patients come in and tell me that. And they're like, oh, no, I've been told since I have a diagnosis of diabetes, I should not eat fruit at all. And I'm like, oh, what in the world? Do not listen to that. So, for those that don't know me, I am Dr. Amanda, and I am the owner of Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine. And we are here to help you to understand different things that actually help with your own diagnoses, especially for things like diabetes, high blood pressure, and pre-diabetes, because at Atkins Enlightenment Lifestyle Medicine, that's who we like to treat, and actually help you to heal through things that are simple lifestyle changes that you can do, and try not to use medications as the first line treatment. Okay. So, as always, if you have questions, I'm going to be looking down to see if there's any questions that come up. If you have questions that come up, please put them in the chat or comment. And if you are watching live, say hello. And if you're coming back to the replay, say hashtag replay, and then still put your questions in as we go along, because I'll be more than happy, my team and I, to come back and answer any questions that you may have as we go along, because I know that one of the most misunderstood foods in diabetes care is fruit, and we want to try to clear that up for you today. Okay. So, like I said, if you see me looking down, I'm going to be looking to make sure that I don't see any questions pop up in the comments. Okay. Don't forget to like and share the video. Okay. All right. So, as we were saying, we're talking about the misconception of fruit and diabetes, because many people with diabetes are afraid to eat fruit because they've been told that it is too much sugar and it will spike your blood sugar, or that fruit is basically the same as candy. But the truth is that fruit is not the enemy. Confusion is, okay? So by the end of this video, hopefully you'll understand why fruit is not the same as processed sugars, and the real benefits of fruit for anyone with a diagnosis of diabetes, and which fruits are best, because people always ask that, how to eat fruit without blood sugar spikes, because I know that that can be real, where people are actually checking their blood sugars after they eat fruit and they're like, well, I see it spike, so I'm not going to eat fruit. And then how to overcome the fear around fruit once and for all. Okay. So first, let me just talk about some of the objections that definitely are why people are afraid of fruit if you have a diagnosis of diabetes, because they are very real. They are very real. Okay. So one, I hear that fruit is too much sugar. All right. Um, and when you hear that, like fruit is too much sugar, yes, fruit does contain sugar, but it is natural sugar. I want to make sure you guys can still hear me. Okay, good. Okay. So fruit is natural sugar, okay? So natural sugar that is packed with fiber, packed with water, packed with antioxidants, packed with micronutrients. And that's very different from, like, saying, drinking soda, eating candy, or eating baked goods, because we look at that as sugar also. And the way that processed sugar hits your bloodstream is fast, but the way that fruit enters is slow and gentle. So that's a big difference. Another objection I hear when I tell people they should eat fruit with a diagnosis of diabetes is that fruit spikes my blood sugar. And that's like sometimes when people, like I was saying, they test right after eating fruit alone on an empty stomach without any extra fiber or fat or protein. That can definitely cause a rise in your blood sugar. And it's not necessarily the issue with the fruit itself, it's the issue with how it's eaten. And we're going to talk about that more later for you also. Okay. Next is, my doctor told me to avoid fruit. What? So I can say that that definitely has been the training, especially for a lot of traditional medical training, because let's talk about carbohydrate counting, not necessarily food quality, the fiber or the metabolic healing that can occur with eating fruits. And that's why I love lifestyle medicine, because we actually look deeper into these issues. Okay. So avoiding fruit actually can lead people to replace it because they want that sweet taste. They crave that sweet taste, that they use artificial sweeteners. And I've done a video before about artificial sweeteners. You can check that out on my YouTube channel. Or they do a lot of processed diabetic snacks where it promotes, oh, it's low in sugar, but it's so like have these other things in there that your body doesn't recognize, and there stores it as fat and cause you to have more insulin resistance, and it just goes like haywire. So we want to actually focus on eating whole foods. So processed diabetic snacks, artificial sweeteners are low nutrient foods that people often replace fruit with because they're trying to avoid the sugar. And actually, like I said, this actually causes worsening insulin resistance over time. So we don't want to do that. Okay. So what makes fruit different from sugar? So when you eat fruit, you're actually getting fiber. So I love the way one of my mentors put it. Like people look at it like you look at like fruit, and you want to see the whole food, the actual, like the apple, the actual cherry, the actual kiwi, and not necessarily like the foods that it can be breaking down into. So for example, the apple. So you get apple. So the apple will be the best thing because it has the whole food, it has the fiber, and everything that's there, compared to applesauce that you kind of get rid of some of that because you're processing it a little bit. And most time people can eat more applesauce than they can eat actual whole apples. So look at that. So you'll be getting more of the sugar from that content, and then going from an apple to like something like apple juice, where all the fiber is taken out, and because you just squeezed out all the sugar and you're drinking the sugar. So that's a big difference that I want people to really realize, whether you have a diagnosis of diabetes or not. So most people are like, oh, apple juice, I'll drink that because it's 100% juice, and I'll just do that because that's better than soda. But again, it's still just basically you're drinking sugar. So we want to try to stick with the whole food, and we're gonna try to stay on the subject of fruit. So fruit, the fiber that's in there. So the fiber actually helps the digestion slow down, and actually helps to slow down the glucose absorption. Therefore, you have fewer blood sugar spikes, and you have better hemoglobin A1C over time. And for those that don't know what a hemoglobin A1C is, that is what us as medical professionals use as a gauge of how well your diabetes is controlled. Also, it's used to know how, if you have a diagnosis of diabetes, that's one of the criteria that we actually look at, is a hemoglobin A1C, and that is a 3-month blood sugar average. And you're like, well, how can it be a 3-month blood sugar average? And it's the way, not try to get too deep, but your red blood cells, how it carries sugar around your bloodstream, and how long the red blood cell stays in your system. So that's the way we can figure out that it's about a 3-month average. Okay. So and you're like, why is the red blood cells carrying around sugar or glucose? Well, glucose is really what our body uses for actual energy. So like the brain, it doesn't necessarily recognize it full. It'll recognize the glucose, the molecule, biochemistry. Love it, but I won't go that deep. Okay. So it actually, eating the whole fruit with the fiber helps butter your hemoglobin A1C over time, and then also improves your gut health. And we talk a lot about, improving gut health and that good bacteria there, and how we're really seeing how the gut health relates to a lot of chronic illnesses. So we really want to focus on the gut health. Okay. So most people that have a diagnosis of diabetes are fiber deficient, and they're not over fruit fed. So we're really missing the fiber there. So again, we want to try to eat the whole food. Okay. The next thing would be of why the fruit is different than sugar is because of the antioxidants in there. And we have to remember that diabetes as a whole is an inflammatory condition. And a lot of our chronic illnesses are inflammatory conditions in our body. That's like chronic inflammation in our body over time. So the antioxidants in the fruit actually helps with decreasing that inflammation. So a fruit is a rich antioxidant that reduces oxidative stress, protects our blood vessels because we need that that highway of carrying nutrients from one place to the other, and it also lowers our cardiovascular risk. So I don't know if you have heard, but as us in the medical field, we think of a person that has a diagnosis of diabetes is like equivalent of a person having a heart attack. And you're like, man, why is that? And so because there's so much damage that can go on in the blood vessels and the bloodstream because of that extra sugar that's in there. So you may be like going to your doctor and they're like, oh, your hemoglobin A1C is like 7. So we need to start you on all these medications. And one of them could also be a cholesterol medicine, like a statin. And you may be like, but you just told me my cholesterol was good. Why are you putting me on a statin? Well, again, if you have a heart attack, that's like one of the medications they automatically put you on because they want to decrease your risk for having another heart attack or another cardiovascular event. So they actually add on all these medications to reduce your risk otherwise. And so that is the standard of care. So don't think that your doctor doesn't know what they're doing, but we really still want to emphasize what we can do to help with decreasing the inflammation naturally with our foods that we're already going to be eating. We already have to eat. So let's look at those things, okay? So that's the antioxidant part of the fruit. The next thing is like water content. So fruit is hydrating and very low in calorie density. And sometimes we're like, how in the world can you, as a plant-based eater, I get this question, eat all this food and it still seems like you don't gain a lot of weight. And that's because the foods that are, whole food plant-based are very low, usually in calorie density, except for nuts. So we'll talk about that another time. But most of the foods are low in calorie density. So you can eat a lot of food and still have very low caloric intake, but a high nutrient intake. And because of that, and that with fruit, it actually helps with weight management. Okay. And so some people are like, that doesn't make any sense. How is fruit and all that sugar going to cause me to make sure my weight stays good? But it's the way that our body is actually made to recognize certain things, and that our body actually then uses that food, turns it into the nutrients that we need, and actually burns it off as energy. So, but if we eat foods that our body's like, I have no idea what this is. So like, what would it not know what it is? A Dorito. That was one of my favorite chips, Doritos. It doesn't know what a Dorito is. It knows what an apple is, but it doesn't know what a Dorito is, So that would be the difference in, our body recognizing food. So water content for the fruit helps with, like I said, weight management. It helps with satiety. So because it's high in fiber, it has the water content. So when we actually eat a piece of fruit, we'll feel more full than if we actually drink like the fruit juice, again, comparing the two. And then it actually helps control cravings. So that's very good with the water content. Another big thing that our fruit contains is the phytonutrients. And so a lot of people forget about those. They think of like macronutrients that we get, like carbs, protein, and fat. But there's a lot of phytonutrients things in there that are from plants. They're from plant compounds. That's like a plant, meaning like fruits and vegetables, that actually improves our insulin sensitivity and cellular health. And these things that no medication can fully replace. Okay, so we already talked about how you may be started on different medications because you have a diagnosis of diabetes, but these phytonutrients is very hard to replace, even if you try to get all the supplements in the world. Like there's so many supplements out there, and I've done a video a while ago about the supplement companies and things like that, of how when we do scientific research, that we have to isolate certain things to actually say, yes, this actually helps that. And it has to be without any other interference. So you have to focus on one specific thing. And all those researchers out there know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, your study would not be valid. So, but when you think of actually food, it is complex. You cannot pull out one nutrient versus the other. They're all working together, and which makes our bodies miraculous. I love it. that when we eat certain foods, how all these things, all these nutrients working together, and therefore helps with our cellular health. And therefore, like I said, a medication is directed towards one thing. Even a supplement is directed toward one thing. Like they may have a supplement that has, a mixture of things like different vitamins, different herbs, things like that. And they're like, oh, that's good. But we're still missing something if we take it in a capsule or a tablet. Because you might think that's not the actual whole thing. They use those whole foods and grind them up and put them all together into a powder or something like that. And then you actually take it. Easier to swallow a pill than to like eat a piece of fruit, because you actually have to put in the work to chew it. But it's still not the same. Like you do not get the actual same nutrients, and your body does not absorb them as much as the same as you do the food. Okay. So that's the difference between taking the supplement and actually eating the whole food. Okay. So fruit just doesn't just worsen diabetes. Okay. It actually supports the healing when correctly used. Okay. So now we're going to talk about some specific benefits of fruit for diabetes. Okay. So we're going to be very specific. Okay. Eating the right fruits regularly can, we talked about, improve insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, lower our cardiovascular risk, support healthy weight loss, improve digestion and gut microbiome, the gut bacteria, and reduce cravings for processed sweets. And that is like a so big one, because people are like, well, if I eat fruit, then I'm going to crave more sugar. And usually that's not the case. You don't have like, if you want fruit, but not like the processed sugars. And instead of having like the rainbow of candy, you can have a rainbow of fruit. And that actually will help reduce sugar cravings, and you get all the other nutrients in there that you don't get in the candies. Okay. So when we look at actual studies, actually consistently show that people who eat whole fruit, not just the juice, remember, not just the juice, tend to have better metabolic health and not worse. And again, that's what we want to get back down to, is the metabolic health, the cellular health, because that's where that chronic inflammation can build up, and we want that inflammation to be gone. Okay. So people who remove fruit often end up binging on refined carbs later. So you're like, I'm not going to eat the fruit because it's going to spike my sugar, but I'm going to eat these chips, and whatever, these bagels, and put on some fats, and that'll be better. But that's not what we want to do. Okay. Fruit actually helps retrain our palate for the natural sweetness. So our body does need sugar, and that's why that sugar taste is so good to us, that natural sweetness. But if we actually are not careful, and we actually eat a lot of other processed sugars or artificial sweeteners, we'll say, oh, I don't like to eat certain fruits because they're sour, they're not as sweet as I like them to be. And that's usually because we have this hyper palate, because we're so used to things tasting so sugary. The same things can go for salt, that our body is not used to what the natural taste of the fruit should be. Okay. All right. So now to the nitty gritty, what people really want to know the most about when we talk about fruit and having a diagnosis of diabetes. So what fruit should I eat? Because there's so many fruits out there that I know that will spike my blood sugar. So a few examples here. This is not in a end all list. And again, you want to make sure that you're eating it correctly, which we'll talk about too. So some of the fruits that when eating whole that are good when you have a diagnosis of diabetes are berries. Okay. So, and you want to pick things that are in season. So when I say berries, I really like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, acai, all the berries, they are very good. They're high in fiber, they're low in the glycemic index, and they're very, very extremely antioxidant rich. Okay, so we want to look at that. There's certain apples that are good. Some are very sweet, but usually some apples are good with rich in soluble fiber. We will definitely want that fiber that's there. Don't forget that that's the reason why can help stabilize our blood sugars instead of spiking them. The apple support our gut health, and usually that has a help with a fullness and appetite control also. Okay, other things would be like make sure I don't see any questions. Citrus fruits, like grapefruit. These things are high in vitamin C, which like yeah, again, a good thing for our immune system. It helps to improve insulin sensitivity, and you want to eat it whole and not just the juice. So when you actually eat the actual fruit, the texturizing, and not even juicing it, or I'm even blending them down like that can break down the fiber. You want that fiber that's there. So eat the whole fruit and not just the juice. Another big one is cherries. Cherries can be very good. Sometimes it can be tart. But if you get it good, I remember one summer we went out, my daughter and some of my sisters and I went to a cherry farm, and oh my goodness, to actually pick fresh cherries from the tree, bring them home, clean them up and eat them. We had so many cherries, and I'm like ruined for the rest of my life, because like when you buy cherries from the store, it's like, oh, they're okay, but there was nothing like those cherries fresh from the tree, and it was so good. So when you actually have that, and that's like what our body wants. So if you can actually go and like pick your fruit fresh from the actual tree, like when they're ripe, and get those, I mean, that's usually one of the best ways to get it. And I know sometimes a lot of us live in like food deserts and things of that nature, and you don't have that access. Still, getting the fruit from the grocery store is good. But if you can get it from the tree, maybe even plant the tree in your yard, and then start to bargain. Like that's what we did before grocery stores. You would grow your food and trade with your neighbors. And that's a good way, even in food deserts, where you can actually get that going. Community gardens, which I know a lot of people are starting to do. So that is like a wonderful way to actually get that food fresh. So with the cherries, they have anti-inflammatory and a low glycemic impact also. Let's see, another fruit would be kiwi. Again, excellent source of fiber. It actually helps support heart health. So it's very good. Okay. So when we actually eat these fruits, we want to actually pair them wisely, because again, we know that it has a fiber, we know it has the antioxidants, we know it has the water content, we know it has the phytonutrients, but it's still, a lot of sugar that's in there. So we want to eat it with, like nuts or seeds, something like that has like some protein with the fiber to help stabilize the blood sugars. You don't necessarily want to eat fruit alone. You want to try to eat it with meals, and try to, again, stick to the whole fruit, not the juice or the dried fruit, because the dried fruit pulls out that water content that we said that was very important. And the dried fruit is very concentrated in the sugar portion of it, just like the juice. Okay. And then pay attention to your own glucose response. A lot of people diagnosed with diabetes now can use the continuous glucose monitor, so you can actually see in real time what you're doing. So again, pair those the fruit up with a meal, so you have that protein with the fiber to help kind of stabilize the blood sugar a little bit more. All right, so I would be remiss if I did not actually bring in the faith in healing and reminding us that our body are temples and not trash cans. And as another video that I did, that our bodies should be more like a garden, not a graveyard. Again, so remember, that is how we want to treat our bodies. Okay. Food is designed to nourish our body, not to harm. And a lot of the so-called foods that are out there now are bringing harm to our bodies. So we want to actually remember that we want to nourish our bodies, give it what it needs. Okay. So remember that fruit grows naturally, and you eat it the whole food, like I said, pulling it from the tree, not created in a factory like supplements. Just say, remember that. Okay. So we don't want to fear the whole food. We want to normalize what it is. So we don't want to normalize the ultra processed foods. that's something that has gone off track. Okay, so do not fear whole foods. Okay, so we don't want to fear that. So healing doesn't come from deprivation, it comes from alignment. So we want to be in align to what our body needs and to go from there. All right, so don't forget to share this video, tag someone in the video that you know that has a diagnosis of diabetes or pre-diabetes. If they are like, I'm not eating fruit, I need to know where it comes. I need to actually get a better understanding of it. So hopefully we're able to answer all those questions for you, get rid of the myths. And if you are a person that is living with prediabetes or diabetes and you want guidance that focuses on healing, not just managing your numbers, hey, I'm Dr. Amanda. I would love to support you. That's what I do. So don't forget to book your appointment, your virtual visit, because we're 100% virtual at www.dramandamd.com. That's DRAMANDAMD.com. All right. So before we leave you today, again, imagine that you stopped fearing foods because you fear that your blood sugars will spike. Imagine that you've learned how to eat confidently again and that you're managing your diabetes and you're feeling empowered instead of exhausted, trying to figure it out. And remember, you do not have to do this alone. All right. So blessing health to y'all, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to share the video. Bye-bye.